The chandeliers dripped light like liquid gold, and Claire Bennett stood beneath them in a dress she had borrowed from her roommate, feeling every stitch of it announced that she did not belong. 200 guests in silk and diamonds moved around her like she was furniture. She had come to support her cousin's engagement party, not to be catalogued and dismissed by every man in a tuxedo who looked through her rather than at her. A waiter bumped her elbow, and she nearly dropped her glass, and that was when she heard the laugh, sharp and cruel, from a cluster of men near the bar. One of them, silver-haired and reeking of bourbon, raised his voice just enough for the room to catch it. "Sweetheart, the open bar is for guests, not for whoever wandered in off the street." Claire felt her face burn. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came, only the old familiar shame of being small in a room built for people who had never once been made to feel small. Then a hand settled at the curve of her back, warm and certain, and a voice she did not recognize spoke directly into her ear. "Play along, and I will make this worth your time." Before she could ask what that meant, the man beside her turned to face the crowd, and she realized with a jolt that it was Dr. Nathaniel Cole, the trauma surgeon whose face had been on the cover of a business magazine she had seen in a waiting room only weeks before. "Everyone," he announced, his voice smooth as poured wine, "I would like you to meet my fiancée. We were not planning to share the news tonight, but it seems the moment has chosen itself." The room fell into stunned silence, and the bourbon-soaked man actually took a step back. Nathaniel pressed a kiss to Claire's knuckles, his grey eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her forget, for one dangerous second, that this was a lie. 3 days later, Claire was back in the world that actually belonged to her, folding towels at the laundromat where she worked double shifts to keep her younger brother in his diabetes medication. The bills sat in a drawer at home, thick and unopened, because opening them only confirmed what she already knew. So when a black car pulled up outside and Nathaniel Cole stepped out in a coat that probably cost more than her rent, she assumed she was dreaming. He did not smile. He handed her a folder instead. "I looked into your situation," he said, his tone clinical, almost apologetic in its bluntness. "Your brother's medical needs, your mother's mortgage, the wages you are losing working 2 jobs instead of 1. I am offering to resolve all of it. In exchange, I need a wife for 1 year, a woman who can stand beside me at hospital fundraisers and board dinners, and convince my family I have moved on from my divorce." Claire stared at him, certain this was some elaborate joke, but his face never shifted from its careful, measured calm. "There is one condition," he continued, sliding a single page free from the folder. "If either of us develops real feelings for the other, we are contractually required to say so aloud, and the arrangement ends immediately, along with all financial support." He looked at her like he was reading vital signs. "Love is not a variable I intend to allow into this equation, Miss Bennett. Do we have an agreement?" She signed with a hand that would not stop shaking. The rules came quickly after that. Separate wings of his penthouse. No physical contact outside of public appearances. No questions about the divorce that had apparently hollowed something out of him. Claire followed every rule until the night of the hospital gala, when his hand rested against the small of her back and lingered a beat too long, when his thumb moved without permission, a small unconscious stroke that made her breath catch in her throat. She glanced up and caught him staring at his own hand as though it had betrayed him. Neither of them said anything. They simply stepped apart, the air between them suddenly too warm for the room. The slip came 3 weeks later. His mother cornered them near the dessert table, sharp-eyed and unconvinced, and Nathaniel pulled Claire close and pressed his lips to her cheek, soft and lingering, meant only for the audience watching. But when he pulled back, his eyes stayed on her mouth for 1 second too long, and Claire felt something crack open in her chest that had nothing to do with performance. That night in the car, neither of them spoke. "Good performance," he finally said, staring straight ahead. "You too," she answered, though her heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. 2 weeks after that, Claire came down with a fever so sudden it dropped her to her knees in the middle of a charity luncheon. Nathaniel cancelled 3 surgeries without hesitation, carried her to the car himself, and spent the night in a chair beside her bed, checking her temperature every hour with hands that were far gentler than his voice ever was. At 2 in the morning, half asleep, she felt his fingers brush the hair from her damp forehead, slow and tender, a touch that belonged to no contract. She murmured his name, and he froze completely, his hand hovering above her skin like he had just realized what he was doing. He stood so fast the chair scraped against the floor, and he left the room without a word, his footsteps echoing down the hall like a man running from something he could not outpace. In the morning, he was gone before she woke, and a note sat on her nightstand instead, written in sharp, urgent handwriting. "We need to talk about the clause. Meet me in my study when you are well." Claire sat up slowly, the paper trembling in her fingers, and for the first time since she had signed that contract, she understood that the real danger was never going to be losing the money. It was going to be losing him, and having no legal way left to say so.